Welcome back to Bert vs. Movies. This is another episode of Because Plot. American Pie's 1999 raunchy teen sex comedy starring Jason Biggs, Chris Klein, Mina Suvari, Tara Reid, Eddie K. Thomas, Shannon Elizabeth, Eugene Levy, Sean William Scott, and Jennifer Coolidge as, of course, Stifler's mom. Today I'm going to break down all of the because plot moments that only happen not because it's natural, not because it makes any sense, but because the movie says it needs to happen. How many are in American Pie? Well, let's get into it, shall we? Our first because of plot moment is actually the very beginning of the movie, our opening scene where our main protagonist, Jim, is entertaining himself to some scrambled adult material, which was probably a much more common thing in 1999 than it is now because not so many people have cable and adult entertainment is very free on the internet. Anyway, his mom walks into the room without knocking, mind you, and this is a common theme throughout this movie because apparently in this universe, no one either has an A, lock on the door, or B, knocks before they walk into a room. But his mom walks in to give him his coat back, and as she's about to leave the room and she gives him a kiss goodbye, she hears a bit of dialogue because at this moment when Jim's trying to fumble and change the channel, his remote control decides to stop working. Which is funny because I'm going to assume that right before that even happened, his remote control was working just fine. So he can't get it to work. His mom's obviously caught him watching adult material. He's got a pillow on his lap because he was trying to hide, his boner. And his dad walks into the room because he just had me walking down the hallway because this needs to happen for the movie. We gotta kick the movie off with a great joke, so this needs to happen. And his dad, in his awkwardness trying to help solve the situation, goes to grab the remote, but when he does, he grabs the pillow too. Why did he also grab the pillow? Makes no logical sense to me. I could get grabbing the remote control, that's one thing, but you're like grabbing the remote control and the pillow. He literally has one in one hand and the other in the other hand. That would be like the equivalent of, say, someone asked you for help with their smartphone while laying in their bed, and you go, oh, let me take a look at your phone, and you take the phone, and then you grab the blanket off of them, and then you're shocked that they're in their underwear under the blanket. But I feel like they wanted this joke to happen, but they couldn't think of a natural way for Jim's parents to see his boner. So they just had to make his dad grab the pillow, even though, in my opinion, that makes no real sense whatsoever. But, dick joke funny, so it needs to happen. And also on a side note, it's just probably not a good idea to walk into a teenager's room. Like anyone who's over the age of 16, you probably should knock because otherwise you're going to see some weird stuff. Teenagers do weird things. They're weird. And you're only going to do yourself a disservice and scar your own psyche. They're not little kids anymore. Just for your own benefit, knock before you walk in. Yeah. So after that, we make our way to East Great Falls High, the high school setting for this movie, and we get introduced to our other main characters, Oz, Finch, Steve Stifler, and Kevin, who is just a nothing character. Just, like, I don't know why he's here. Anyway, we also get introduced to several other side characters, Nadia, Jessica, who is just the best. I love Jessica. She's probably one of my favorite characters in this entire movie. Michelle and the Band Geeks, who have a much smaller role in this one, but her role actually increases as the series goes on. And Vicky, Kevin's girlfriend, who is also just so horribly nothing. Just like to say that they have bland personalities would give bland personalities a bad name because bland is at least a personality, and neither one of them have that. That they're perfect for each other in their non-existent humanity. Yeah, like their only purpose in this movie is to complain about sex. That's literally like all these two talk about the entire movie. They don't have any personality outside that. Moving on from that, we move on to our first major part of the movie at Steve Stifler's house, which is arguably the only reason anyone hangs out with Stifler because it's quite obvious that no one really likes him because he's abrasive and he's dumb and he's just a jerk. by every metric of the word. But he has a cool house and he throws cool parties with lots of underage teen drinking. But that being said, everyone's enjoying themselves. Jim is perving on Nadia, a girl who he lusts over the entire movie, but up until a certain point, I don't think he'd ever actually spoken to her in person. And the one time he tries at this party, he messes up horribly. So while he's contemplating how to talk to her, Kevin and Vicky sneak off to go to a bedroom to have, some oral fun, let's put it that way. And this takes us into our next because of plot moment. So it starts off, follow me on this, it starts off with Vicky giving Kevin an oral presentation, which isn't the because of plot moment because, you ever been to a party? These kind of things happen at a party. People hook up and do all kinds of crazy things at parties all the time. No, 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 no. So she's giving him an oral presentation, and as it's about to conclude and he's about to finish, he manages to hold it, sit up straight, grab the beer, sit over the beer, and perfectly finish in the cup within the matter of roughly 15-20 seconds. I find that impressive. And then right when that happens, Stifler comes up with a girl and subsequently kicks those two out. And the girl obviously a little bit nervous about hooking up because, she knows it. I think she pretty much knows Steve Stifler's reputation, but she's going to hook up with him anyway because cool party, I guess. And while he's trying to convince her, though he doesn't really care, he just wants to get the action going, he grabs the beer, the random beer, mind you, that Kevin just, finished in. He grabs the random beer and tries to hand her the beer. Before she can drink it, though, he starts talking, gets her relaxed, and then he himself drinks the beer. And this right here is our because of plot moment. Because, okay, we've all been to parties. I think we all know that at a party, you should never just drink random open beers, whether they're in a can or a cup. You should never just drink random containers of alcohol or any drink because it could have someone spit all in it, cigarette butts, roofied, or, some good old-fashioned man juice, if you know what I mean. It's just a bad idea. It's not smart. And any respectable partier would know that. Even in a moment of desperation, you would have came up with your own beers and not brought it up there without any beer of your own. And so I count this because this had to happen just so you could make Steve drink it, just so you could make him sick, just so you could set up the joke that Kevin does later when he says, "Hey Steve, how do you enjoy that pale ale?" Yes, all of this was just a setup for that one-liner joke. The only good line Kevin actually has in this entire movie, which he delivers in such a Kevin way. And also because, dick joke funny. So the morning after the party, when 4 of our 5 protagonists, main characters, whatever you want to call them, it doesn't really matter, are hanging out post-party, chilling, they see Sherman Schrader, aka the Shermanator, someone who I think was literally only in this movie to make these characters seem like regular people by comparison because he's just bizarre and speaks in Terminator puns and no. But he comes out of the room with a girl that he had met previously at the party. They hug. She says she had a wonderful night and she leaves. And he sort of leads them to believe that he and her had hooked up, which enrages Kevin because, how dared someone, especially Sherman Schrader, have sex before him because obviously this is a competition and if you can't get someone to sleep with you then you're not valid as a human being or as a man and you're a waste of space who just shouldn't exist. So Kevin comes up with the idea for a pact for them to all have sex by prom because this movie needs some kind of thing to pretend like it has sort of a loose plot to connect these loose scenes together to make it technically a movie and not just a collection of horny teens doing things until it just kind of ends after about 2 hours. Yeah. So after this, later on in the film, Jim's dad sends him down because he felt bad about the opening scene when Jim was, watching scrambled adult movies. his dad decides to give him some adult magazines, and it's as awkward as you can imagine if it were your own father doing this for you. And I count this also because I just don't think a parent would give that to their teenager. Maybe I'm wrong. You can tell me if you're a parent if you have done that for your child. But I just don't think that he would have. And I think it's something that he specifically has to do because it has to service this movie at a later moment. Which moment? We'll get to that. And when we do, what just happened here will make even less sense than it does now. Are you excited? I can't tell because I can't hear you. I'm talking into a camera. Alright. So Oz joins the choir after that awkward moment between Jim and his dad to hit on choir girls, which honestly, I don't blame him. The choir girls in this movie are quite hot, and also girls in choir and band are an untapped resource of hot girls. Don't always go for the obvious choices. You go for the less obvious, you'll find some very interesting women who will be at least very attractive and will have some personality and actual interests. It's funny how that works. And through this, Oz forms a bond with a girl named Heather, and they begin to grow closer. But I don't really care about that. Let's get back to Jim, who, when push comes to shove, will always pick the most awkward and self-deprecating choice every time, no matter what, because reasons, because it just needs to happen, because he is like a gold mine of plot contrivances. No, he is a well of because of plot moments. And leading into our next because of plot moment, of course, this is Jim. He comes home and sees that his mom has made a freshly baked apple pie. Now, anyone who's seen this movie, you know where this is going. If you haven't, I'll break it down for you. Earlier in the film, when they were leaving Dog Years, the hot dog place that everyone seems to hang out at, he was asking Oz, what does third base feel like? Because Jim and probably Finch are the two least sexually experienced of the entire group. To which Oz tells him that it feels like warm apple pie. So Jim, being the genius that he is, sticks his fingers in the pie, nice and warm and fresh. So he decides to enjoy himself to the pie on the counter in the kitchen. I mean, not like he could, take it to a room or to the bathroom even or to his bedroom to do it there. No, he had to do it on the counter. The least comprehensible place to do it. Why? Because he needed to get caught humping the pie on the counter, which he does, by the way, by his father, who, this is like the second time he's caught his son doing something just humiliating. And maybe it wouldn't have mattered anyway because, again, in this world, no one either A, locks doors or B, knocks when they walk into rooms. They just sort of enter, so maybe it would have made no difference anyway, and maybe Jim wasn't safe no matter what, but I just think that, anyone would have, if they had the idea, would have gone somewhere private with it and not just did it on the kitchen counter where A, anyone could have just walked in, and B, you're surrounded by several windows where literally anyone can see you in broad daylight doing this on your kitchen counter. But, half this movie's humor is just Jim humiliating himself because, someone has to be the butt of every joke, and that someone is Jim. So after that, we're back at the school again, where Jim gets asked by Nadia to help her study for history after school, and they're going to do it after she gets done with dance rehearsal. To which Jim obviously says yes, because, it's Nadia. Why would you say no to Nadia? And after that, they're at the library discussing what Jim's going to do with this hot girl who's coming over to his house, who's going to change clothes in his house. And Stifler, of course, has to talk shit and make fun of him, saying that he's not going to do anything with a hot girl getting naked in his house. And Jim, being Jim, says the most natural thing that anyone would say. First thing that pops in his head is, what should I do? Broadcast her over the internet? Because that is obviously the most natural thing to say in this moment. That's the not definitely not something that needs to be said so that we can set up the next scene. No, it's something that's said because that is the most logical thing a person would say in any given scenario. Not because someone has written it to be so. No, not at all. It it is though. It is. Yeah. So Nadia comes over, and after some awkward conversation with Jim's dad, Jim leaves her in the room to, get changed. And let's walk our way through this. Now, if you're someone who's coming over to study at someone's house and you had to change after an event, I'd imagine that, you might use the bathroom. Sure, okay, granted, but imagine you would probably take, 5 or so minutes, change your clothes, make sure you're all together, then come down or have them come up so you guys can get ready to study. What does Nadia do? Nadia strips down to her underwear, which I'm not complaining about, casually walks around Jim's room, patting her stomach, checking her body out, Then she proceeds to take a seat on Jim's bed, lounge on his bed, and then starts going through his drawers, unprompted. Like and pulls out his adult magazines given to him earlier by his dad. You see, it all comes full circle. Now, it wasn't like a magazine was poking out from the drawer was half open. It wasn't like one of them was tucked underneath a pillow. No, the drawer was closed. She opened this drawer unprompted. I don't know who does this. Does anyone do this? When you're in someone's house, you just start going through their drawers unprompted for no reason other than someone in the script said, Nadia enters room, walks through Jim's room. Nadia pulls open the drawer to find the magazine that Jim's dad gave to him earlier. And so, of course, she started entertaining herself to the magazines, and Jim gets convinced by his friends to run back over there because this is his possible one chance to get with Nadia, which is probably right. And Jim comes back and handles it awkwardly, as Jim does, because, come on, this is Jim, after all. And Jim dances for her, gets her all revved up. He lays next to her in the bed, and of course, just the mere touch of her causes him to finish twice in his boxers. Because Jim is just a failure as a human being, and more importantly as a man, and everything he does just leads to ruin. Because Jim is not allowed to achieve or succeed at anything because the joke needs that, because Dick joke funny and Jim's an idiot. So after this, Nadia gets deported because her sponsors didn't like that. Well, obviously, because Jim, in his infinite Jim wisdom, when he meant to broadcast it to only a few of his friends, mistyped the address and broadcasted it to the entire school. So he now also is humiliated in front of the entire school, and his chances for getting a date to prom went to. But after this point, the movie pretty much goes as these kind of movies go. All the teens who had drama throughout the movie reconcile their drama. Jim magically gets a date to prom because he needs to, because the movie needs to conclude. They all go to prom. The prom is, I'll give them the credit on this prom though. This prom is a very crappy high school prom. It's not like how teen prom movies were in the early 2000s, late 90s, where the proms are these big elaborate affairs that seem like the school spent half its yearly budget just on this prom, and it makes no sense. Everyone does a choreographed dance. No, it's not one of those kind of proms. Yet this prom turns out Sherman Schrader, the Shermanator, didn't hook up with that girl. Surprise, surprise, right? And she outs him in front of the entire school. He pees his pants, gets humiliated. It's hilarious. They all go to Stifler's lake house after the prom. Everyone pairs off. Everyone hooks up. Everyone loses their virginities. Finch hooks up with Stifler's mom. Stifler passes out because of it. We'll find out later that he, I think, attempted to beat Finch up. And, yeah. Jim gets left by Michelle, who became his prom date. And after that, the movie pretty much wraps up, and there's a little after credit scene where Jim's dad, again, just walks right into Jim's room without knocking, I'm prompted to see Jim, who is web chatting with Nadia, and he is stripping and dancing for her. And yeah, that's pretty much how this movie ends. Now, despite everything that I've said so far today and all the craps I've taken on this film, I actually still really enjoy this movie. I mean, it's a fun look into the pressure teenagers feel around sex and peer acceptance. It explores the difficulties young men deal with trying to navigate life changes and the idea that sex is almost less about the person or the act, but more about the social validation you get from proving your worth by the fact that someone wants to sleep with you, and how obsessive teenagers can be about sex, especially when they haven't even had it yet. But it does it in a fun way, and it's not overly preachy, and it doesn't try to push some kind of message on you. But there is a sense of morality and emotional growth and true heart that actually lies at the center of these films that I appreciate. But before I go, I also want to list off one honorable mention that's not really a because of plot moment, but it's a funny moment nonetheless, and it's a moment where Stifler spikes Finch's coffee and gives him explosive diarrhea because you see, throughout the movie, Finch had paid Jessica to spread rumors about him to say that he was hot shit, so that way many girls would want him for prom. And before he could capitalize off of it, however, Stifler spikes his drink with laxatives, really strong laxatives, by the way, to humiliate him. So then he ends up with no date, and that's how he ends up hooking up with Stifler's mom. And I count it because, well, it's not really like a because of plot moment. Like, it's something that could actually happen. It's not something you should do, however, because that counts as tampering or poisoning someone's food. And if you gave them the wrong dose, you could cause them serious internal or bodily harm. And you could possibly get a felony for that. And I don't think it's worth it. Just like putting Visine in someone's drink. It's not worth it, and it could possibly kill them. You know? So don't do that. But I give it an honorable mention because it's still a ridiculous scene, even though it's probably slightly more plausible than some of the other things I've talked about today. So that's it for American Pie. I hope you enjoyed this. Come back next time when I do the sequel, American Pie 2. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of the things I put on this list. If there's anything that I missed that you think should have been on it. And until next time, guys, I'll see you later, alright? Peace.